The walls inside a maximum security prison are cold, sterile, and built to erase a man's legacy entirely. But for Harvey Weinstein, a man who once shaped the dreams and fears of an entire industry, those walls still weren't enough to quiet his voice. In the opening months of 2026, during a high-stakes retrial interview, the disgraced mogul decided to make one last move. Sitting before the cameras, stripped of his influence but not his bitterness, he delivered a statement that would spark a worldwide storm. He didn't simply defend his past. He turned his attention toward the present. With a carefully calculated smirk, he suggested that not everyone he encountered during his peak years was a victim. Some, according to him, had willingly played the game of ambition. Then he brought up the Duchess of Sussex by name, hinting at supposed secret footage collected by MI6 during a long-forgotten summer in France. It was an explosion that stretched far beyond prison walls, crossing the Atlantic and shaking both the foundations of the British monarchy and the carefully maintained calm of Montecito. To understand why a few remarks from a prisoner created such chaos, we need to go back to a time when Harvey Weinstein stood as Hollywood's undisputed king. He wasn't merely a producer. He was a gatekeeper, a man who controlled the very oxygen ambitious actors relied on. Back then, one approving nod from Harvey could put you on the road to an Oscar. One look of disapproval could end a career before it ever began. One of his main territories was the Cannes Film Festival, the glittering showcase on the French Riviera that doubles as a high-stakes marketplace for influence and power. Every year in May, Cannes transforms into a stage of luxury and excess. Sunlit docks become lined with yachts resembling naval warships, while the air fills with the scent of expensive cigars and quiet desperation. This was Weinstein's kingdom. Inside the private suites of hotels like the Carlton and the Majestic, deals unfolded far away from flashing cameras and curious paparazzi. It was a world built on rehearsed smiles and transactional handshakes, where ambition called like a siren and very few had the strength to resist. Back in 2011, the world didn't know Meghan Markle as royalty. She was known as a regular on the legal drama suits, a talented and driven actress still climbing toward Hollywood's upper circles. For someone in her position, Cannes wasn't a holiday destination. It was a battleground filled with opportunities. The festival itself operates like a maze of social hierarchies, and Meghan was navigating that maze with precision. Picture the setting: Mediterranean heat, nonstop camera flashes, and the constant pressure to connect with exactly the right people. And Harvey Weinstein was the definition of the right person. He represented the doors to Hollywood that seemed permanently locked to everyone else. Rumors from that era painted Meghan as someone who understood how to work a room, always composed, always polished, always thinking several steps ahead. She wasn't attending parties for entertainment. She was searching for a route to the top. But while she scanned the room for opportunity, someone else was observing for a very different reason. And this is where the story shifts from Hollywood drama into the world of espionage. Britain's Secret Intelligence Service, MI6, has long maintained an interest in major international events. Cannes represented something unique, a rare moment where powerful people from across the globe gathered in one concentrated location. Intelligence agencies weren't necessarily focused on rising actresses. Their attention centered on the men financing films, the Russian billionaires, the Chinese financiers, and political power brokers moving through Weinstein's exclusive circles. To MI6, Weinstein represented a major hub of influence. By embedding operatives as hotel staff, security personnel, or event workers, agencies could quietly observe conversations carrying potential national security implications. Every handshake, every private conversation, every whispered agreement in those suites could be monitored, archived, and stored away. In her pursuit of career opportunities, Meghan Markle reportedly became little more than collateral information. Her interactions were allegedly captured, digitized, and stored inside a secure London archive. Forgotten data no one ever expected to resurface. The alleged footage itself was never described as graphic or explicit. Its impact supposedly came from something far more unsettling: ambiguity. According to individuals claiming access to the raw MI6 files, the recording shows a 20-minute meeting inside a private suite. The atmosphere feels casually exclusive. Meghan moves through the room with a confidence that seems to hide her outsider status. But the moment Weinstein approaches, the energy shifts. He reportedly attempts to establish control the way he often did, placing a hand on her arm in a gesture suggesting authority. Yet the future Duchess doesn't react. Instead, reports describe her carefully maneuvering through the interaction. The audio, said to be unusually clear, captures a conversation that sounds less like casual talk and more like negotiation. Weinstein comments on her unusual presence and talent that plays intelligently. Her response remains measured and calm. Nothing happens without a strategy. You can count on me to do the work. It becomes a moment that feels like two people sitting across from one another, both fully aware of the rules of the game being played. To some people, this becomes a story of survival. To others, it looks like a revelation of ruthless ambition. When the Weinstein allegations and the supposed MI6 connection exploded into public view in 2026, the silence coming from the Sussex home in California felt impossible to ignore. For years, Prince Harry has positioned himself as his wife's strongest defender, the man willing to stand against media attacks and challenge what he described as the cold machinery of the institution. But this situation is different. It didn't originate from a tabloid headline. It emerged from what was being framed as a historical record. Sources reportedly close to the couple described Harry as consumed by intense anger. But increasingly, that frustration appeared directed inward. He was said to be struggling with a difficult contradiction: the narrative of victimhood they presented to the world versus the image of a woman who had once been a calculated and experienced player inside one of the most dangerous environments in entertainment, long before their paths crossed. At its core, the issue becomes one of trust. When parts of a spouse's hidden history suddenly involve intelligence archives and alleged links to the most infamous predator in Hollywood history, even the strongest relationships can begin to feel unstable. Across the Atlantic, inside London, reactions have been described as controlled panic. For King Charles III and Prince William, this represented a crisis with no established blueprint. The monarchy survives through carefully managing public perception, and the Cannes recordings represented exactly the kind of leak they couldn't contain. But the greatest fear inside palace walls wasn't the footage itself. It was MI6. Because suddenly the public was asking a deeply unsettling question. Did British intelligence know any of this before the royal wedding? And if they did, why was it hidden? If they didn't, how did they miss it? Reports suggest the palace shifted into containment mode, attempting to distance the monarchy from Hollywood's darker circles while simultaneously preventing wider exposure of the alleged files. But damage to the crown's image had already begun. A deeply personal controversy had evolved into something much larger, a matter touching national security, turning the Sussexes into a continuing source of vulnerability for the monarchy itself. The financial fallout arrived quickly and without mercy. By the middle of 2026, Meghan and Harry were reportedly deep into another major rebranding effort, preparing lifestyle ventures and fresh media projects. But in today's world, a brand is built on reputation. And Weinstein's name had become toxic. Even a suggestion of transactional connections with a figure like that can send corporations running for the exits. Reports claimed major agencies in Hollywood and charitable organizations had begun reassessing their relationships with the couple. At the same time, silence from the Sussex camp was being interpreted by critics as guilt, yet issuing a denial carried its own danger, especially if additional footage ever surfaced. They found themselves trapped inside a vacuum of reputation, where the image of authenticity and honesty they spent years building appeared threatened by a past they had worked hard to leave behind. The dream of creating a post-royal empire suddenly seemed far less certain, replaced by the harsh consequences of a dangerous association. As the months unfolded, tensions between London and Montecito reportedly moved toward a breaking point. The Cannes footage had transformed into a weapon inside a quiet war over public perception. Intelligence insiders reportedly suggested that the leak itself may not have been accidental at all, but a carefully timed detonation. In the world of espionage, information has always been currency. Secrets aren't simply hidden, they are held for leverage. And somewhere, someone may have decided it was time to remind everyone of a brutal reality. The past rarely stays buried forever. For Meghan, the very traits that once helped her survive Hollywood, polish, ambition, and strategic thinking, were now being reframed through an entirely different lens. The narrative of an empowered survivor suddenly faced competition from another story, one centered on calculated advancement and transactional success. It serves as an uncomfortable reminder that in the world of power and influence, your safety often depends on the secrets no one knows. To understand where everything truly began, we have to return to the Majestic Hotel in 2011. Inside those sunlit suites, choices were made that would continue echoing for years. The aspiring actress standing in that room could never have imagined that one conversation might someday evolve into a matter carrying implications for the British establishment itself. At that moment, she was simply navigating a system according to the rules in front of her. But Hollywood and monarchy operate under very different rules. Hollywood rewards ambition. The monarchy rewards restraint. The Khan's recordings symbolize the violent collision between those two worlds. A moment where Riviera glamour crashed directly into Palace stone, and the impact created a disaster neither side ever expected. The footage itself feels almost like a ghost returning after years of silence. Now the world watches a public reckoning unfolding in real time, one that increasingly resembles the final chapter of a tragedy. The Sussex identity was built on presenting themselves as truth-tellers, people willing to expose what they saw as the hidden darkness inside the royal institution. Now, however, the spotlight appears to have shifted. Now they are the ones under examination, and the irony is impossible to ignore. Claims originating from Weinstein's prison cell forced audiences around the world to take a second look at the image they had been given. People began asking difficult questions. How much of Meghan and Harry's story reflected authentic reality, and how much had been carefully shaped through Hollywood instincts and strategy? Was their marriage the ending of a genuine love story? Or was it one final move in a career built around opportunity? Those are questions no public relations machine can answer. The uncertainty surrounding the tapes has allowed the public to fill the missing spaces with their own theories and suspicions, creating a divide that may never truly disappear. Meanwhile, the role played by the men in gray suits inside palace walls has come under growing scrutiny. By 2026, reports suggest that 6 separate investigations are underway, each attempting to determine exactly how much the royal household knew about the alleged MI6 material during the 2017 vetting process. If intelligence files did exist, who made the decision to keep them away from the Queen? Was it an effort to avoid public scandal, or simply a devastating failure of oversight? The Cannes footage has opened something resembling a political Pandora's box, raising uncomfortable questions about where the British state and the monarchy intersect. It hints at a reality where the secret records held by intelligence agencies may carry greater power than the public image carefully maintained by the Crown itself. The Sussexes have now become a case study of what happens when a modern celebrity enters one of the world's oldest institutions without fully understanding the invisible surveillance that comes attached to it. Harvey Weinstein's final desperate move proved something unsettling. Even a man whose empire has collapsed can still trigger an explosion. His objective was never redemption. It was confusion. It was dragging other people into the shadows alongside him. By focusing his attention on one of the most polarizing women in the world, he guaranteed his words would spread across headlines everywhere. For one final act, he returned to his role as a puppet master, pulling on old strings to create present-day chaos. From inside a prison cell, he somehow transformed himself into a major figure within a royal controversy, a kingmaker from behind bars. Even in ruin, it was a horrifyingly effective achievement. He understood that simply mentioning the alleged Khan's tapes could create damage impossible to reverse, and he was right. The Sussex narrative has always centered around survival. Their story told the world they left Britain to protect their peace, their well-being, and ultimately their lives. But the alleged footage introduces a competing version of events. One where the Duchess is framed not as someone trapped inside a powerful system, but as someone capable of mastering it. It paints the image of a woman who understood the transactional nature of influence and who knew how to operate within it to pursue her ambitions. And that competing narrative is exactly what makes the leak so dangerous. The material doesn't need to be graphic. It doesn't even need to be explicit. It only needs to challenge the story people thought they already knew. Because in today's world of high-retention media, contradiction becomes the ultimate magnet for attention. People are fascinated by a fall from grace, but what captures them even more is the revelation of a hidden history. As 2026 moves toward its final months, reports suggest Montecito has become a place of growing isolation. The Sussex brand now appears locked in a battle on two fronts, one public, one deeply personal, a legal war against media institutions, and a private struggle against unresolved ghosts from the past. Prince Harry is reportedly attempting a counterattack, deploying legal teams in hopes of suppressing access to the alleged MI6 material. But the darker corridors of the British establishment rarely move easily. The rumors remain, the files allegedly remain, and the shadow of the Cannes audio has become a stain impossible to fully remove from public perception. The lesson they may be discovering is painfully simple. You can leave a nation behind. You cannot leave your history behind. The luxury and glamour of the French Riviera in 2011 has now transformed into the poison haunting their reality in 2026. The Cannes recordings tell a story about what happens when Hollywood's hidden ledgers collide with the cold and unblinking gaze of intelligence agencies. At its core, it becomes a story of surveillance, ambition, and the destructive force of secrets. And perhaps the greatest tragedy is this: the complete truth may never emerge. The public may never hear the unedited audio or see the full footage. But in the battle over perception, the shadow surrounding a tape can sometimes become more powerful than the tape itself. The Duchess of Sussex now finds herself permanently linked to echoes of her past, a ghost resurfacing from the gilded world of her early career. The modern fairy tale has slowly transformed into something darker and far more complicated, a web of power, influence, and unanswered questions. As spring 2026 continues, the fight has expanded far beyond public opinion. Now it has moved into some of London's most secretive courtrooms. Legal analysts have pointed to an unusual wave of activity surrounding national security exemptions, measures often used to keep MI6 records beyond public reach. Reports claim Prince Harry's legal team has been working tirelessly, not only denying the existence of any recordings, but ensuring that if such files do exist, they remain locked away under the Official Secrets Act indefinitely. And in doing so, a strange paradox has emerged. The harder the vault is defended, the more people begin wondering what could possibly be inside. By fighting so aggressively to keep doors shut, the Sussexes may unintentionally be fueling speculation that there is something hidden behind them. Within British legal circles, this type of response resembles what is known as a Glomar response, where authorities neither confirm nor deny the existence of records. But in the era of viral headlines and endless news cycles, neither confirm nor deny often gets translated by the public into something far more damaging: guilty until proven otherwise. The legal landscape of 2026 has become a minefield where one wrong decision, one mistaken filing, or one unexpected disclosure could permanently reshape royal history. And with every fresh headline connected to these allegations, the fortress surrounding Montecito grows taller. But pressure from worldwide curiosity is beginning to leave visible cracks in the walls. While legal battles continue unfolding in London, another kind of conflict is taking shape far away on the streets of Beverly Hills and across the hillsides of Montecito. In the world Meghan once fought to rise through, the name Harvey Weinstein is no longer simply a memory. It has become a lasting symbol of toxicity. By 2026, guilt by association had evolved into one of the fastest ways to destroy a career. Sources inside major talent agencies reportedly suggest that calls to the Sussex camp have become increasingly rare. The elite dinner circles and A-list gatherings that once defined their California dreams suddenly feel exclusive in a very different way, a kind of exclusivity that no longer includes them. And perhaps that is the cruel reality of Hollywood. The industry forgets talent remarkably quickly, but scandal? Scandal is remembered forever. If the alleged cans footage frames the Duchess not as an empowered survivor, but as a calculated strategist, it changes the relationship of trust she built with audiences in a fundamental way. Even longtime allies in Hollywood are reportedly stepping back, concerned that any connection to the alleged MI6 angle could invite unwanted scrutiny into their own worlds. It has become a form of social exile, one that may sting even more deeply than leaving royal life itself. Because it comes with a painful realization. Even in the land of freedom, acceptance lasts only as long as your latest headlines allow. Meanwhile, behind the stone walls of Clarence House, King Charles III reportedly faces a dilemma capable of breaking any parent. On one side stands his son, the young boy who once walked behind his mother's coffin, now trapped within a storm of old shadows and unresolved history. On the other side stands the crown itself, a 1,000-year institution that simply cannot afford to become entangled in the chaos of a Hollywood retrial. Reports from mid-2026 suggest the king held several crisis discussions with Prince William over what insiders privately described as the Sussex issue. And the tension surrounding those conversations is said to be immense. Prince William, often portrayed as practical and decisive, has reportedly argued for a complete separation, even discussions involving the removal of titles in an effort to shield the monarchy from the consequences of the alleged MI6 files. Charles, however, remains caught in an emotional storm. Because he understands that if these recordings were ever publicly released, the emotional impact on Harry and the future facing his children could be impossible to reverse. Inside palace walls, the atmosphere of controlled panic has reportedly evolved into something far more painful. No longer simply a public relations crisis. Now it resembles a family tragedy. The royal household appears to be watching a slow-motion collision unfold, and perhaps for the first time, they are confronting an uncomfortable truth. Not even centuries of influence can silence a ghost returning from the French Riviera. As global attention remains fixed on this unfolding reckoning, one disturbing lesson becomes impossible to ignore. In the dangerous world of influence and power, secrets rarely remain private. Eventually, they become weapons, waiting patiently for the exact moment they can cause the greatest destruction. The alleged cons footage became more than a rumor. It became a detonation powerful enough to alter the course of the monarchy and reshape the lives of the Sussex family forever. Because the past is never truly gone. It simply waits. And eventually, it rises. Thank you for joining us through this dark and complicated chapter. The world surrounding the royals is rarely as simple as it appears, and the story surrounding the alleged cans tapes may be only another chapter in a much larger narrative still unfolding. Share your thoughts on these shocking developments in the comments below, and we'll see you again in the next update. Until next time, goodbye.